Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Van Hollen, Ranking Member Haggerty. Thank you, Chairman Gensler. As the questioning of my colleague indicates, there is widespread interest in and concern about not just the years of alleged fraud carried out by Mr. Bankman-Fried at FTX, but concern about the whole sector, about the safety and security and transparency of crypto transactions. You've said the 33 Act and the work of the SEC is critical to providing protection for the half of all Americans who invest and who are at risk. I'm glad that on a bipartisan basis, this committee is coming forward to support a level of staffing and resources and technology needed to deal with emerging challenges like how to effectively regulate crypto. And your funding is deficit neutral. I mean, one of the great things about it is we're not expending more taxpayer dollars. Is there one critical area you would point to briefly where you think either staffing, technology, or resources are lacking and you would urge us to prioritize investment beyond the agreement that's been reached by this subcommittee?
I thank you for that question. I think that our full funding request, which is about $70 million more than you were able to come together on, would provide about 170 more people.
Yep.
And that's across our examination, our disclosure review, which is a really important piece where issuers need feedback, and enforcement. But it's also technology. And a big piece of it is at give or take $400 million, we are really, most of that technology spend right now is about our legacy systems, and technology is changing so rapidly.
Yep.
And even just data storage costs a lot more. This sheer volume of data. I think that would help us be better cops on the beat and better, just even be more responsive to market participants wanting to get their filings reviewed.
How many rule proposals do you currently have under development, and how many of them might be finalized later this year?
I believe, sir, that we have 34 or 5 proposals that are already out public but not yet adopted, and we have maybe a handful, 5, 6 that are still being considered to be proposed. But that's our whole docket. In terms of timing, it's really when the staff is ready and the commission's ready, but it will take more than through the end of this year.
I joined a dozen of my colleagues in sending a letter just encouraging you, given the suite of rules in proposal development, to just make sure you're providing sufficient time for notice and comment on the proposed rules. I don't believe we got an answer. What's your answer to concerns that the aggregate impacts on the market of such a broad range of proposed rules needs to be taken into account?
Well, in each of these rules, we do take into consideration the economic analysis, and then sometimes there's some interactions, and we note those in those rules. But we benefit from the feedback, whether it's from large market participants, their trade associations, individual investors, and then we take that in consideration. And as I said earlier, on average, these rules from proposal to final take a year to year and a half, but the formal comment periods have been about 2 to 2.5 months from when we vote it out, we put it on our website, we start getting feedback. We've also reopened or more than a dozen, I think it's 20 of them, to get additional comment. And sometimes we update economic analysis and put that further out. And where appropriate, we make adjustments in the final rules.
I do think it's important to regulate in a wise and transparent and measured way so that the regulations are both effective and sustained. A last question about a specific proposal on swing pricing as an option used by funds currently. How many funds have actually utilized swing pricing since it was authorized in 2016?
Sir, I'd have to get back to you in detail, but I think very few. I mean, it's while it's voluntary, I'm not sure. This is on mutual funds for those who are listening. Yeah.
I would appreciate an answer back in terms of how you think the proposal for a hard close would impact the use of swing pricing and whether or not this is going to have an undue market impact. It strikes me, what I've heard is that it's a tool that is very rarely used. And so perhaps the analysis needs to.
Yeah, no, that is correct. I don't know the exact number, but it's been very rarely used. It's open-end bond funds work for the American public. Really, in many ways, it's a very good product because you can get the benefit of low cost and diversification. In times of stress, there have been times, and we saw it in 2020, in times of stress where we rely ultimately on the Federal Reserve, the fire department, so to speak, to come in and to support the markets. And so we're trying to build a little greater resiliency into the markets in those times of stress.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Bozeman.